The guards surrounded the tavern. This caused the barmen, who were already preparing for opening, to stop their work. They could only sit aside and watch the guard captain talking to Fang Hao not far away. That's how the whole thing went down. Although I'll testify for you, he is, after all, the son of the interior minister. It's hard to say how things will develop, the guard captain said, sitting on a wooden chair and explaining everything that had just happened. Clatter. Not far away, the tavern owner, who was wiping a rough earthenware mug, dropped it on the floor and quickly bent down to pick it up. Just moments ago, she had been reminding him that the shop across the street had offended a big shot. The son of the interior minister. This had caused the shop to be unable to open or be sold. Fang Hao hadn't even left the room yet, and he had already run into the interior minister's son. Now, avoiding offending him was difficult. The sudden noise only caused the two people talking to glance over before they continued their conversation. How is this usually resolved? Fang Hao asked. Hard to say. For some reason, the city lord has left many matters to the minister, so his son. The captain paused slightly. You understand what I mean, right? I understand. Fang Hao nodded. Before long, word came that the city lord requested their presence. Fang Hao and Njia were led towards the city lord's mansion. Along the way, Njia said curiously, how about we run? Run? Why run? We're in the right, why run? Besides, their city lord isn't as strong as you are. What's there to be afraid of? Fang Hao said in a low voice. Cyril, the city lord, was only a blue tier 5 hero. In a fight, he might not be able to defeat Njia. Aren't you afraid you'll be in danger? Njia said again. It's fine. I brought a teleportation scroll. Oh right. How serious is the minister's son's injury? He's not dead. That's good then. Passing through the streets, the two arrived at the city lord's mansion. Inside the hall, besides city lord Cyril, whom they had met once before, there was also a tall, thin middle-aged man with curly hair. Lord City Lord. Fang Hao nodded in greeting. Have a seat. Mr. Fang Hao. Fang Hao, bringing in Jia with him, sat down to the side. My interior minister says your guard attacked his son. I'd like to understand the situation, Cyril said calmly. There was no discernible hint of favoritism in his tone. Yes, but the cause of this incident was Mr. Minister's son wanting to take my mount and drawing his longsword when my guard advised and blocked him. Fang Hao explained, bang. The tall, thin minister's face turned red with anger. He slammed his hands on the table, glared at Fang Hao, and began to scold loudly. Nonsense. You barbarians from the countryside actually dare to attack a public official in Pearl City. What great. He swallowed the rest of his words halfway through. A beautifully crafted white short sword, shaped like the crown of a sword tree, was already pressed against his throat. Speak properly when you speak. If you spray spit again, I'll put a hole in you, Fang Hao said in a deep voice. The other party clearly wasn't here to reason. Of course. Fang Hao also preferred a simpler approach. All right. Both of you sit back down, Cyril said again. The interior minister retreated bit by bit, creating some distance before continuing. Lord City Lord, he actually dares to draw a weapon here. This is simply unforgivable. Cyril frowned, looking at him, and cursed under his breath that the old man was blinded by anger. Look at Fang Hao down there. Does he look scared? That relaxed demeanor, it was as if he were in his own hall. Fang Hao's identity had always been a mystery. Wiping out a bandit camp that had been entrenched for a long time in a single day proved that he had a considerable military force behind him. Could he really touch him? Start a war with a city for your son who causes trouble everywhere? Was that possible? All right, I've looked into this matter. Both sides made mistakes. I will arrange for someone to treat your son later. Let's just consider this matter settled, Cyril said directly. He didn't mention who was right or wrong, simply glossing over it. The interior minister frowned, just about to protest, when he saw the warning look in Cyril's eyes that he could only swallow all his hatred and grit his teeth, saying, Fine, I'll listen to Lord City Lord. This matter is settled. Haha, good. Mr. Fang Hao, what do you think? Cyril looked at Fang Hao. This is Pearl City after all. Hitting someone was a bit excessive in the end. I'll listen to Lord City Lord. Fang Hao said with a slight smile. The matter everyone was worried about was resolved so quickly. Cyril was good at smoothing things over. There was no right or wrong. Both sides were at fault. The matter was just like that. Nobody should mention it again. Of course. Fang Hao was quite satisfied with this outcome. After all, it wasn't his person who got beaten up. The interior minister left in a huff. Fang Hao, however, stayed and continued. Lord City Lord, I've taken a liking to a shop. I'd like to settle on it and see how much it costs. All right, which one have you taken a liking to? Cyril asked curiously. The one on Commercial Street, opposite the Rose Tavern. Oh, there's still a vacant shop on that street. Looks like your luck is pretty good, Cyril said with some surprise. Perhaps. That shop had been closed for 2 years because it had offended the interior minister's son, and no one dared to buy it. Just now, the tavern owner was still mentioning this matter to him. Now it was fine. There was no need to worry so much. The person had already been beaten by Njia, so offending or not offending was no longer an issue. Someone, Cyril called out that a servant walked in from the side. Lord City Lord, take Mr. Fang Hao to handle the shop transaction. Understood. Mr. Fang Hao, miss. Please follow me. The servant led the two away and handled the shop's procedures nearby. The price was ridiculously high, making him wonder if he should just build a city solely to make money by building houses. This was truly too profitable. After completing the procedures, the money needed to be delivered to the city lord's mansion within 3 days. Then, they could take the deed and officially become the owner of the property. The two walked out of the city lord's mansion while chatting inside the tavern. I bet he won't be coming out, a barman said, moving tables and chairs and discussing what had just happened. He's been at the city lord's mansion for so long. He's probably had his head chopped off. That's not necessarily true. He's from out of town and he's rich. That old guy only dares to bully people from this city, not outsiders. Only living people are divided into rich and poor. The barman continued. Creak. The door was pushed open again and dazzling sunlight streamed in, causing a few people to squint slightly. Fang Hao sat down at the bar again, and Njia also sat beside him. The barman widened their eyes and exchanged glances. Even if he was fine, he shouldn't be back so quickly. Resolved. The tavern owner was also a bit surprised. Everyone in the city knew that the interior minister's family was even more troublesome than a rogue that Tio come out so quickly. These two young people must have quite a background. Resolved. Fang Hao continued. You haven't finished telling the story about this bounty yet. The landlady brought 2 glasses of beer and placed them in front of the two. She asked curiously, Are you interested in this story? Earlier, after learning about the shop from the landlady, he noticed a new bounty notice had been added to the tavern's bulletin board. This notice wasn't about bandit suppression or clearing out monsters somewhere. Instead, it was an exploration bounty. You didn't need to fight, and could even avoid all enemies along the way. The goal was to find clues about a graveyard, whether it was the location or discovering related information. You could receive a reward from a mercenary group. Seeing that Fang Hao was interested in this bounty, the landlady also told him a story that had been passed down about the city lord and the person in the tomb. But just as the story began, the guards rushed in, interrupting it as soon as they came out. Fang Hao found the landlady again, wanting to hear the rest of the story. Interested, Fang Hao said, looking like he was eager to hear the story. All right, the landlady said. Actually, the story's authenticity is very low. It was only because storytellers wrote it down that it's been passed down to the present. Okay, just listening casually. It doesn't matter. The landlady tossed the rag aside, sat down opposite them, and began to speak. The story was actually quite simple. It said that there was once a young city lord, tall and handsome, the object of admiration for all the women in the city. One day, a strange girl arrived in the city, and the two quickly fell in love. The young city lord gradually grew old, while the girl remained young. One night, the girl was killed by the city lord's enemy and died in the castle. The city lord held a funeral for her and buried the family's most precious treasures along with the girl. They say, the landlady said, her eyes glistening with tears, that countless gold and silver treasures were buried with the city lord's beloved, right there in the mountains to the west. That hateful enemy, to break up these lovers like that. Cough, cough. Let's put the lovers aside for now. Which mountains? Do you have a map? Fang Hao asked immediately after taking a sip of beer. The landlady rolled her eyes at him. Good heavens, she thought. He's not here to listen to a story. He's here to inquire about the bounty. Where would I have a map? But it's easy to find. If you have a map, I can point it out to you. Fang Hao opened the map from his lord's book and placed it in front of the landlady. After being surprised by the map's realism, the landlady roughly pointed to a location west of Pearl City. It's roughly here. It's very easy to find. If it's so easy to find and has a fixed location, then what's there to explore? Fang Hao asked. That mercenary group offered such a high reward, and the approximate location was known. Couldn't they just go find it themselves? Why bother posting a bounty then? It made the whole city aware that these people were looking for a tomb. You can think of that. So do you think those stingy mercenaries wouldn't? This is a mountain range, and I heard the tomb is somewhere at the foot of the mountain. How easy do you think that is to find? The landlady asked irritably. Mercenaries are people who live by the blade. They are not only greedy but also stingy to in the tavern. Mercenaries often pick out some seemingly honest patrons and extort money for drinks using various excuses. They might even secretly follow you at night, act as bandits, and rob one or two fat sheep. Mercenaries may seem legitimate, but in reality, they are just people who risk their lives for money. Trying to get an advantage from them is truly too difficult. Has anyone tried? Are there any dangers on the way? Fang Hao asked again. People have been going there one after another over the past couple of days. There are some wild beasts along the way, but no real danger. It's just that everyone returned empty-handed and are complaining that this bounty quest was put out just to make fun of everyone, the landlady thought for a moment and continued. You would hear people discussing these things if you just sat in the tavern for a while in the evening. The landlady was just relaying what she had heard to Fang Hao. All right, thank you for the story. If I can find this place and get the bounty, I'll give you a share. Haha, then I'll thank you in advance, little brother. The landlady laughed heartily, clearly not taking Fang Hao's words seriously. Bounties in the tavern are not verified for authenticity. It's hard to say someone isn't just bored and full of themselves, posting a fake huge bounty to play a trick on people who make a living in this line of work, and after confirmation from more than one group. The landlady was basically certain that this bounty was fake. Fang Hao's promise was just something to hear. All right, I won't bother you any longer. He finished the beer in his glass, stood up, and said goodbye to the others. Goodbye. Leaving Pearl City, the two got on the giant lizard and began returning to the territory. The lizard ran nonstop the whole way, finally returning to the territory around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Hearing the sound, came out with 2 maids to greet them. Master, Anya, you're back. Are you hungry? Do you need lunch prepared? By this time, and the others had already eaten lunch. Fang Hao and Anya had also eaten something and had 2 beers at the tavern. They had also taken in a bellyful of wind along the way. And not only were they not hungry, but they kept hiccuping. Ask among the maids, are there any who can count, or who have worked as merchants? Oh. Nodded and went to check with the maids. Fang Hao went straight to the bathroom, simply washed his head, and came out. Outside the door, the white fox maid was standing there waiting. What is it? Fang Hao looked at the fox girl beside him. Master, Sister asked me to come find you, the fox girl said softly. Sit down, Fang Hao said. The fox girl didn't sit down, but stood cautiously to the side. Fang Hao continued to ask, what's your name? Can you keep accounts? Master, you can just call me Xiaobai. I can keep accounts. I was in charge of selling furs in the original Fox People village, the white fox said, lowering her head. Okay, Fang Hao replied and began to check the white fox's attributes. Xiaobai. Tier 2. Faction, Beastman racial traits. Living creature. Evasion, alertness. Skill, businessman. Innate ability, junior business mastery. Living creature. This unit can be healed, is affected by morale, emotions, and other states, and is immune to bone manipulation and similar abilities. Evasion. When running, ranged evasion is increased by 20%. Businessman. Familiar with commercial sales, increasing profits generated in business by 5%. Description. The Fox people once relied on cleverness and cunning, traveling between various tribes, driving large caravans, and selling novel and useless junk. Fang Hao continued to check the attributes of the other fox girls. And indeed, only Xiaobai possessed the businessman skill. Currently, the territory has few people, and he couldn't assign undead heroes to human cities. So he could only let the fox girls manage the shop he bought. I bought a shop in Pearl City, which is a human city. I'll put you in charge of it when the time comes. Considering the current situation, it's not easy to choose someone to be in charge of the shop. The undead can't be placed in human cities. And most of the maids are illiterate. It's okay if the amount of money is small. They can still count it clearly, but once the amount of money becomes large, it's difficult to handle. Fortunately, Fang Hao is relatively lucky. The white fox possesses the attributes of a businessman and used to sell goods in the village. It should be enough to temporarily manage the shop. Master, what kind of shop is it? White Fox asked softly. A restaurant. Hearing Fang Hao's words, White Fox's face instantly turned pale. Master, my cooking skills are average. I'm afraid I'll affect you. You don't need to cook. You'll be responsible for managing and keeping accounts. Just make sure the accounts are clear. Oh, well, okay, Master. I will definitely do a good job. All right, go ahead and get busy. When I have time, I'll take you to see the shop, Fang Hao said. Yes, Master. White Fox answered and then left the room. Fang Hao also walked out of the city lord's mansion. He saw Duo Jin walking towards him. Usually, Duo Jin is a skeleton merchant and rarely leaves his post unless there are special circumstances. Lord, good afternoon. Duo Jin quickly stepped forward, straightened his clothes, and bowed slightly. Good afternoon, Duo Jin. Lord, I received an order that requires your review. Duo Jin took out a trade alliance order from his arms and handed it to Fang Hao. Order. Requirement: 50,000 units of black gunpowder. Transaction rewards: 5,000 war coins, a white steel firearm. Dwarf influence plus 10. 50,000 units of black gunpowder. Are the dwarves planning to blast a mountain or start a war? They can make black gunpowder themselves, but they still need to purchase such a large quantity. So something major must be happening with the dwarves. The money isn't much, but the reward of a white steel firearm is quite attractive. Okay, let's go to your place, Fang Hao said. The two came to the Trade Alliance building, and Fang Hao directly signed his name on the order. After accepting the order, Fang Hao came to the warehouse again. He opened the production page of the Lord's book. Black gunpowder. Saltpeter 2, sulfur 2, wood 1. Every 100 units of black gunpowder requires 1 wooden barrel. There is a large inventory of saltpeter and sulfur in the warehouse, besides what was sold in the channel. The rest should have been obtained from mining or, unknowingly, a lot has accumulated. Produce 500. Wooden barrels 50. Confirm production. After the light flashed, 50 wooden barrels filled with black gunpowder appeared in front of Fang Hao. Fang Hao immediately checked the surroundings of the warehouse to make sure there were no open flames. Otherwise, the territory would go up in smoke. There really weren't any places to use fire in the territory. The lighting areas were all luminous stone lamps. Cooking was done in the residential area. Not here. He handed the order to the skeleton merchant waiting beside him. He said, when you see the dwarves, you can tell them that if they need anything in the future, they can directly place an order with us. After speaking, he felt that it wasn't quite right and corrected himself. No, we can provide items with stable quality, but the items obtained from the transaction should preferably be blueprints. I understand. Lord, is there anything else you want to say? The skeleton merchant stood aside, waiting. Fang Hao really wanted to trade with the dwarves, but he didn't have many blueprints that the dwarves needed. This became an obstacle. That's all. Okay, then I'll go deliver the goods. Lord, the skeleton merchant said and disappeared with the wooden barrels filled with gunpowder. After sending away the skeleton merchant, Fang Hao continued with his next plan. Fang Hao asked a maid to call the blood hunter over. Soon, the blood hunter flapped his huge wings and landed in front of Fang Hao. Lord, Fang Hao handed the map from the Lord's book to the blood hunter. There's a mountain range here that I need to scout first. The place Fang Hao was pointing to was the location the tavern owner had indicated to him. It's just that Fang Hao hadn't explored this place yet, and it was still covered by a fog. That he wasn't interested in the love story the tavern owner mentioned, but a tomb was still more attractive. What do you mean, Lord? The blood hunter asked curiously. At this distance, using divine descent would be a great burden, so you'll control the bone dragon and look for a tomb, or the entrance to a tomb. It was already approaching dusk, and he wasn't planning to search for the tomb in this mountain range today, but to scout it out first. The aerial view is good, and the entire mountain range can be seen at a glance. Finding any strange buildings from above would definitely be easier than searching in the mountains. That it's good to be mentally prepared as well. Okay, Lord, when do we depart? Now? I'll cast Divine Descent first. Fang Hao returned to the room, and the eyes of a skeleton warrior outside the door lit up with a faint blue soul-fired eye in front of the Lord's mansion. A bone dragon lowered its body, waiting for Fang Hao to come out, stepping on the bone dragon's ribs. Fang Hao directly boarded the bone dragon and sat in the back row. The bone dragon flapped its wings and soared into the sky in a gust of air, flying towards the mountains. If all the troop types in the territory that could be used as mounts were ranked by speed, the first place would definitely be the bone dragon. The second place would be the giant lizard. The third and fourth places would be the skeleton war wolf and the skeleton horse. And after that would be the ordinary skeleton infantry. And the undead troop types cannot appear in front of humans. He uses the giant lizard when going to human cities, when there are no concerns. The bone dragon is still faster and more stable. The bone dragon soared into the clouds, and the air currents whistled past his ears. If only he hadn't washed his hair first. Would riding the bone dragon for a lap blow off the split ends? After flying for about half an hour, they were already close to the target mountain range, descending below the clouds. They could more clearly overlook the situation of the entire mountain range. What the tavern owner called the mountain range was just 3 mountains. Only when walking into the mountains would one feel the sense of continuous mountains. Fang Hao felt that this place was more like a mountainous area, with large undulations and steep slopes. But seeing the whole picture from the air was still far from the mountain range of the dragon burial pit. The mountains were towering, and occasionally 1 or 2 sparse trees could be seen. This should be it. Fly lower and see if there are any special places, or places like tomb entrances, Fang Hao said. Okay. The blood hunter gently patted the bone dragon's neck, telling the bone dragon to fly lower and start circling around the mountain, circling around and around. But they still didn't find any suspicious places. Fang Hao's brow gradually furrowed. In a wonder, the tavern owner said that many people had come to find clues, but everyone returned empty-handed. Could this reward really be a trick played by those mercenaries after drinking? How much rice would they have to eat to become like this? Dusk, the setting sun reflected on the lonely ridge. That it was getting late, but they had gained nothing. Let's go back. Finding nothing, they could only return first. The blood hunter nodded, ordering the bone dragon to return to the territory. Lord, even if the mausoleum of a strong person is built here, it will be in the mountain and will not be easily discovered, the blood hunter suddenly said on the way back. This sentence reminded Fang Hao of something. That's right. Whether it was the ancient tomb that appeared because of the collapse of the mountain in Dong Jiu's story, or Xiaoyou's underground tomb, that if it weren't for accidents, both of these places would probably be difficult to find. Who would build the entrance to a tomb in an easily discoverable place like a door? What was he thinking? In the mountain, Fang Hao began to think about new countermeasures. Suddenly, he slapped his thigh. I also have ways in the mountains. After instructing the blood hunter, Fang Hao directly canceled the divine descent state. As soon as he walked out of the room, he saw a long-handled firearm placed on the table in the hall. The long wooden handle was also engraved with plant patterns. White steel firearm, green, category, firearm, damage, level 4 damage, description, a ranged weapon developed by the dwarves to make up for the shortcomings of ranged attacks in the dwarven legions. Awesome. Seeing the attributes, Fang Hao exclaimed, awesome. The green quality already reached level 4 damage. You should know that the orange light feather dagger and the purple sneezing sword were also level 3 damage. Reaching level 4 was already the highest damage weapon in the territory. That it's a pity there's only one. If a large number could be equipped, the archer's combat power could be doubled. After playing with it in the room for a while, Ear prepared dinner. The 3 of them sat down honestly and began to eat dinner. Night fell, and a gentle breeze stirred. The luminous stones within the territory began to emit a soft glow, casting a faint halo over the land. After finishing dinner, Fang Hao once again walked out of the Lord's manor. He stretched his body, then went directly to a building. Iron claw rat nest. Type, special building recruitable, iron claw rat. Iron claw rat, misty crystal 1, description. Iron claw rats can be recruited at this building. Their sharp front claws can break through soil and stones. This building was purchased by Fang Hao from the Merchant Alliance store, but he had never recruited from it since buying it. This time, there's a high possibility the graveyard is in the mountains. So it's time for these little guys to lend a hand. When he killed the stone-striped giant toad at the pool last time, he obtained 5 misty crystals, which meets the recruitment requirements. Quantity selected, 5. Recruit. Hundredfold amplification triggered. Recruiting 505 iron claw rats. 505 fluffy iron claw rats appeared out of thin air, circling Fang Hao as the center, staring at him intently with wide eyes. The iron claw rats had brown fur, and their size was somewhat close to that of an adult pangolin. They had pointed snouts and relatively developed forelimbs with 2 sharp claws. Iron claw rat faction. Fey. Racial traits. Creature, sensitive sense of smell. Digging. Sensitive sense of smell. Underground. They can use their sense of smell to discern direction or food buried in the soil. Digging. Can easily break through rocks and soil. Description. Flower Fae have found a method for planting. They train iron claw rats, allowing them to break open hard ground so that plants can grow better. Rustle rustle. Just as Fang Hao was checking the iron claw rat's attributes, a rustling sound came from not far away, under the soft light. One iron claw rat had already broken through the newly laid stone slab with its sharp front claws and was digging downwards with all its might. A large pile of soil had already accumulated behind the iron claw rat, forming a small mound. And this action was like a contagion. One iron claw rat after another began to move. Their claws reached for the stone slab below, and they started digging downwards. Stop! Don't dig the ground! Fang Hao exclaimed. All the iron claw rats immediately stopped their actions, stretched their necks, and continued to stare at Fang Hao with wide eyes. Each one looked like people watching a fight at the village entrance. This moment, Fang Hao was also stunned. This is bad. These little guys won't tear down his territory overnight, will they? Master, what are these? They're so cute. Eeyore walked over from not far away, picked up an iron claw rat, and rubbed it against her face, just as Fang Hao wanted to remind her that the claws were dangerous. He found that while the sharp claws could easily break through the ground, they didn't harm people. The iron claw rats were quite docile, letting Eeyore rub them as she pleased. Rustle, rustle. Stop! Fang Hao roared again in the direction of the sound. The iron claw rat that had been digging the ground stopped and continued to stare at him with wide eyes. Rustle, rustle. Don't dig. Fang Hao turned in another direction. Eeyore, go call the blood hunter. Fang Hao said to Eeyore, staring at the surrounding iron claw rats. Okay, Eeyore replied, put down the iron claw rat she was holding, and hurried towards the blood hunter's residence. Before long, the blood hunter arrived and found Fang Hao and a group of iron claw rats staring at each other, wide-eyed. My lord, what is this? The blood hunter asked curiously. It was late at night, and the lord wasn't sleeping. What was he doing staring at this group of small creatures? Blood hunter, you might have to work a bit hard tonight. Fang Hao explained the matter of recruiting the iron claw rats. He continued, these little guys are too energetic. They might dig the territory empty overnight. Take them to the mountain range we just visited and have them dig into that mountain to see if there's a tomb inside. Although Fang Hao had built separate residences for Fire, Blade, and Blood Hunter, but undead don't need rest. More often than not, they lead troops out to hunt and patrol. Understood, my lord. Please rest assured, I'll take them. The Blood Hunter replied. All right. Fang Hao continued to have the maids bring over wooden barrels one by one. Then he said to these little guys, all right, 5 of you go into one barrel. Get moving. The iron claw rats understood the command, but they didn't quite understand the number 5, that some barrels were empty, while others were packed full. Fang Hao and the others had to take them out one by one and distribute them into the barrels. After all the iron claw rats were in the barrels, they summoned enough skeleton ogres to sit on the back of the bone dragon, holding the wooden barrels in their hands. Only at the moment the bone dragon flew away did Fang Hao let out a sigh of relief. The territory was saved. Actually, iron claw rats aren't entirely a threat. From the description, it can be seen that they can also help with planting, but they need to be supervised and directed by people. If left unchecked, the consequences could be severe. For now, let these iron claw rats go dig the mountain. Later, he will send them to Zhongbin. Let the farmers in the village raise them. And they can also help break rocks and loosen soil, which is a good idea. Alright, now that these little troublemakers have been sent away, Fang Hao can finally sleep peacefully. He returned to his room and glanced at the regional channel. Then he fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, after a simple wash-up, Fang Hao walked out of his room. It was still the same daily routine of morning runs and push-ups to strengthen his physique. Sigh. Why can't he drink a stamina-boosting potion after drinking a magic-inspiring potion? Don't they say that moral, intellectual, physical, and aesthetic development should be all round? Why isn't he allowed to drink it? Fang Hao grumbled as he ran, feeling quite resentful about not being able to drink the stamina-enhancing potion. My lord, my lord. As he passed the tailor's shop, he was called out by the tailor, Sawyer. What is it, Sawyer? Fang Hao asked, wiping off his sweat. My lord, I feel there's a big problem with the design draft you gave me. I wanted to discuss it with you before making it, Sawyer said. Okay, what's the problem? The two sat down to the side, and Fang Hao asked curiously. Sawyer took out the design draft with the drawing and said, My lord, I feel that this kind of silk stocking you mentioned is completely useless. Using such good material as holy snow silk, what is made only protects the feet, and the defense and warmth are very insufficient. I feel this is an immature design. Since it was a design plan provided by Fang Hao, Sawyer was tactful. He only said it was an immature design, not a failed design. No, Sawyer, you shouldn't consider defense and warmth, but rather beauty and highlighting charm. It's like the crown on a king's head. Do you think it provides defense or cures headaches? Neither, Fang Hao said. Who would use stockings for defense? When necessary, you even have to consider being able to tear them open with your bare hands. But if this kind of thing is made, it will definitely have a market within the Lord's channel. If possible, Fang Hao is even considering entering the local noble market. Those nobles who can always come up with new tricks will be more receptive to these novel things. My lord, how can socks be compared to a crown? The two sat on a bench and discussed the issue of stockings for a long time. Sawyer believed that stockings were useless and that using the best silk in the territory on them was a waste. Ordinary wool yarn could provide warmth. However, Fang Hao did not think so. Although holy snow silk was relatively rare, it had no use at present. Moreover, holy snow silk could also be purchased from the cloth merchant Tavik. So it was not to the point of being so urgently frugal. The two discussed for a long time. And finally Sawyer agreed to make 2 sets according to the plan, first to see if there was a market. If there was, they would continue to arrange production. If not, they would stop production as soon as possible. Fang Hao also agreed with this opinion. Stockings did have a market, but to open up the market for nobles in this world, a catalyst and some publicity were needed. After convincing Sawyer, Fang Hao returned to the Lord's mansion. Just after finishing breakfast, Blood Hunter rode a bone dragon and descended from the sky. My lord, how is it? Fang Hao asked. Last night, Blood Hunter took 505 iron claw rats to the mountains to search for an ancient tomb. He should have news since he returned this morning. My lord, the tomb passage has been found, Blood Hunter said quickly. Fang Hao was overjoyed and immediately asked, Can you confirm if there are any good things inside? My lord, I had the iron claw rats expand the entrance, but we haven't gone down to explore yet. Fang Hao's question was indeed a bit too eager. It was already very lucky to find a tomb passage in such a large mountain. Okay, go count the men and prepare to set off, Fang Hao ordered directly. Yes, my lord. Based on past experience and Dong Jiayue's experience exploring an ancient tomb, there would be a large number of monsters in this kind of ancient tomb. Just in case, it was better to have enough people. No matter what kind of monsters there were, it was better to pile them all up and kill them. Returning to the room, he entered the state of divine presence. Blood Hunter also prepared enough troops, and the army began to advance towards the mountains. This time, Fang Hao and Blood Hunter led the team, and Jia stayed behind. A hero had to be left in the territory, and Blood Hunter was more familiar with the situation in the mountains. So Jia could only be left behind. Before leaving, he instructed Jia that it was okay to sleep in the room, but she was not allowed to go out and play and ignore the territory. Jia patted her chest and guaranteed that he could rest assured with her doing things. The army advanced towards the southwest, passing through forests and rivers along the way. and it still took 3 or 4 hours before they could see the rugged mountains from a distance. Many skeleton trolls were patrolling, surrounding the entire mountain area, and no human dared to approach to look for the ancient tomb on the bounty anymore. Blood Hunter led the way, all the way to the mountainside. At this time, a large hole with a diameter of 1 meter had been dug out here, sloping downwards. Looking down, it was like staring into an abyss, dim and deep. Fang Hao let out a sound, and it immediately echoed, indicating that there was indeed a vast space below. Luminous stones. Rope ladder, Fang Hao said. The skeletons behind him brought out the prepared luminous stones. The rope ladder was thrown directly down the hole, and it took several seconds before a thud was heard. The sound of landing. After confirming that there were no problems, Fang Hao led the skeleton warriors and slid down the rope ladder. Several people landed, under the soft light. Fang Hao finally saw the place under his feet clearly. In the belly of the mountain, a space the size of a football field. The walls were uneven, but some special patterns were drawn on them. The patterns were incomplete, but one could vaguely see the sun, an army with religious characteristics, destroying creatures with huge bat wings. This was different from the murals in ancient tombs in the past, which described the life and deeds of the tomb's owner. Could it be not an ancient tomb, but a ruin? My lord, it seems we are quite lucky. We entered directly into the ancient tomb, Blood Hunter said from not far away. Fang Hao walked around the space with a luminous stone, apart from the deep, dark corridor leading to the depths. There was also a huge bronze door behind them. The bronze door was carved with complex patterns, and in the middle was a keyhole that was almost blocked by rust from the direction of the bronze door. It could be seen that the hole they opened bypassed this bronze door and entered the internal space. Otherwise, they would need the key to the bronze door, which would be a troublesome thing. Okay, let's continue forward. It's not very comfortable here, Fang Hao said. The team began to assemble and walked into the interior along the narrow corridor. The deeper they went into the mountain, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. Every few meters on the mountain walls on both sides, there were lampstands, which had been extinguished for who knows how long, and whether they could still be lit. Fang Hao did not order to light open flames. In the past, watching TV, they all said that there was some gas inside that would explode if it met open flames that he didn't understand, and he didn't remember. Anyway, the luminous stones were still enough for now, so there was no need to try. Passing through the corridor, the front suddenly became much wider. As soon as he walked out, Fang Hao instantly stopped in his tracks. This was a space 5 or 6 meters wide and more than 10 meters high. The stone walls on both sides were dug into stone beds, stacked like bunk beds, extending all the way to the top of the space. On each stone bed lay a body wrapped in a shroud. Some parts of the shroud that were exposed had already rotted away, leaving only some rags and dark traces of the body. If Fang Hao had a scalp, it would definitely be a little numb now. My lord, it seems it really is an ancient tomb. Yes, and it's a mass burial, Fang Hao said in a low voice. Fang Hao said to a skeleton warrior beside him, "Go and take a look inside." The skeleton warrior received the order and walked forward with the weapon in his hand. As they gradually entered, creaking sounds appeared one after another on the stone beds on both sides. Looking up, the bodies on the stone beds sat up one after another, tearing off the cloth strips wrapped around their bodies and picking up the weapons beside them. Even though he had already guessed that these guys would get up, when they really sat up, he still slapped his thigh. Prepare to fight. Fang Hao directly issued the combat order. The probing skeleton also walked back, and the team began to prepare for battle. Ghoul, Tier 4. Bang, bang, bang. One ghoul after another leaped from the stone beds. The ghouls living on the top floor even had their leg bones broken and fell head over heels when they landed. Even so, they crawled towards Fang Hao and launched an attack. Kill, Fang Hao ordered, and the two teams instantly clashed. Ghouls were Tier 4, but they had no defensive measures. They had cloth strips covered with various symbols hanging on their bodies. Fang Hao skeleton warriors, although only Tier 2, were very well equipped. Knight swords, kite shields, and their bodies were also fully armed with no blind spots. This greatly increased the strength of the team, and in the battle, Blood Hunter also displayed super high combat ability. His whole body glowed with a blood-red light, and he held a knight's sword in his hand, killing a large number of ghouls, and the dead ghouls directly turned into a pile of dirt. Not even bones were left. Bang! When the last ghoul was eliminated, the space became quiet again. But the danger was not over. In the center directly in front of the team, there was a stone bed. And on the bed lay a mummified body whose muscles looked as if they had been air-dried. He was wearing a set of golden metal armor. And beside the stone bed was a metal two-handed greatsword. The mummy just lay on the stone bed. Even such a fierce battle just now did not disturb him. This one isn't dead, is it? On the densely packed stone beds on both sides, there were indeed many corpses that had died and never woke up, although the one in front looked fierce. Maybe he really just slept to death, just as Fang Hao was wondering. Creak, creak, creak. The mummy on the stone bed slowly sat up, in its empty eyes. A faint blue fire ignited. Damn liars. All of you should die. A hoarse, harsh voice came from the mummy's mouth. Then, those eyes that had ignited with fire looked at the undead team not far away. You should also die, the mummy cursed. Picking up the great sword on the stone bed. Stone Mound Leader, Tier 10, good heavens. It's a boss battle. Fang Hao looked at the Stone Mound Leader dragging the great sword and approaching little by little. He opened his mouth and said, "How about we sit down and talk? You look like a cultured person. Let's resolve this peacefully." The Stone Tomb Commander advanced step by step, dragging his great sword. Gradually approaching through the dim tomb passage, the iron sword scraped against the ground, emitting a piercing friction sound. Fang Hao saw that he was a hero and was afraid of killing him without leaving a corpse. So he tried to communicate. Since they were all undead, perhaps they could be appeased, which would be a victory without a fight. Evidently, the other party didn't think so. His posture was one of fighting to the death. Since he didn't know what was good for him, then there was no need to show any consideration for their shared faction. Kill him. Bang, bang, bang. Bowstrings vibrated, and arrows whizzed out from the back ranks, facing the dense volley of arrows. The Stone Tomb Commander did not dodge or evade, letting the arrows strike him. He paused slightly, then continued to approach, enduring the arrows. Damn, he's tough, Fang Hao said. The archers carried a limited number of arrows, and they didn't seem to inflict significant damage on the Stone Tomb Commander. The wounds where the arrows struck were like hitting dried preserved meat. With not a drop of blood flowing out. As the Stone Tomb Commander approached, the melee units began their attack. Skeleton warriors, holding black iron kite shields, surrounded the Stone Tomb Commander, using shield bash in rotation, attempting to inflict a stun effect. Whoosh. Immediately after, a dark red light ignited on the Stone Tomb Commander's heavy sword, and he swept it out with full force. Crack, crack. The sturdy kite shields instantly shattered, and the skeleton warriors in front were instantly killed, cut in half at the waist. So fierce, Fang Hao was startled. Blood Hunter, kill him. Yes, sir. The Blood Hunter spread its giant wings and directly leaped onto the roof, diving down towards the Stone Tomb Commander. The Stone Tomb Commander's blue eyes suddenly looked up at the Blood Hunter in the sky, and he let out another hoarse roar. Liars! You damn bats! He directly swung the heavy sword upwards, slashing towards the Blood Hunter. The Blood Hunter folded its bat wings, its body twisting to evade the attack, and its long sword directly pierced towards the Stone Tomb Commander's head. The Stone Tomb Commander's sword momentum was difficult to control, and he directly lowered his head. Clang! The Blood Hunter's long sword directly struck the iron helmet, making a sound of metal clashing. The Stone Tomb Commander's eyes were filled with hatred, and he swung the heavy sword again with force, accompanied by the sound of wind whistling. The stone beds on both sides were shattered by the sword's shadow, and rubble scattered everywhere. The Blood Hunter's body was light, and its bat wings provided high mobility. As it opened and closed them, it flew and swooped like it was on a steel wire, leaving deep, bone-visible wounds on the Stone Tomb Commander's body. After all, the two were separated by a large stage. The Blood Hunter was a blue hero, and its overall attributes were much higher than the Stone Tomb Commander's. But it could also be seen that the Stone Tomb Commander possessed very solid foundational skills. Even though he wasn't a hero himself, he had managed to entangle with the Blood Hunter until now. Bang! At this moment, a skeleton warrior's shield bash caused a stun effect, Everyone took the opportunity to attack fiercely, the second before he regained consciousness. The Blood Hunter swung his longsword, directly cutting off the Stone Tomb Commander's head, and as the Stone Tomb Commander's head fell to the ground, his entire body instantly shattered and scattered like sand. Alas, what a pity, Fang Hao secretly lamented. He just wanted to have a good talk. But it had to escalate to this point, not even leaving a corpse behind. Search. See if there's anything good in this area, Fang Hao ordered. All the skeletons instantly dispersed. Even the ghouls lying on the stone beds who hadn't come back to life were roughly pulled off their shrouds by the skeletons to see if they were carrying anything good. Soon, various spoils of war were collected by his side, besides various rusty weapons, a few greasy human gold coins, and a key. There were 142 traces of death and 75 shadow stones. These shadow stones were scattered on the stone beds, and collecting them took quite a bit of effort. Sir, a treasure chest has been found here, behind the stone bed where the Stone Tomb Commander was originally lying. A silver treasure chest was found. Fang Hao walked over and chose to open it directly. Obtained. Heroic Strike Skill Scroll. White Steel Two-Handed Sword Blueprint. Medal of Courage. Bloodstone 12. War Coin 44. The quality of this silver treasure chest was quite high. Not only did it yield a blueprint, but it also yielded a skill scroll. Heroic Strike. Active. Category: Warrior Skill Level. Level 3 Martial Skill. Effect: 40% chance to ignore armor damage. Description: a powerful warrior. When a sword breaks through all obstacles and strikes down the enemy's head. Damn it. Warrior skill, wasn't all this effort for nothing? He threw the skill scroll into his backpack and continued to look at the next weapon blueprint, that white steel two-handed greatsword. Blue iron ingot 2. White steel ingot 2. Hard tough wood 1. Thick tough leather 1. Blue two-handed greatsword blueprint. The required white steel ingots were missing from the materials. And currently, there were no undead units proficient in using two-handed greatswords as for Zhang Bin's greatsword infantry. They were really not as useful as the undead units. Living troops had more things to consider if they weren't taken care of. It would lead to a decrease in morale and serious battlefield desertion. Undead didn't need so many considerations. Just go up and fight. The Medal of Courage. Category: Medal Effect. Slightly increases the wearer's strength. Increases the morale of the commanded legion by 2%. Description: as faith is devout, courage is immortal. Medal of Courage. Neither the name of the medal nor the description afterwards. They didn't feel like the style of the undead. When did the undead start singing praises of courage? That's right. It does take a lot of courage to transform into an undead. Fang Hao wasn't ready yet to overcome this psychological hurdle. Otherwise, he would also be immortal and indestructible. The subsequent rewards were bloodstones and war coins, which Fang Hao had obtained a long time ago. So there was no need to look at them in detail. But from the bloodstones awarded, he could also tell that this place was indeed related to vampires. After collecting all the spoils of war, he came to the end of the space. Here was another huge bronze door carved with intricate patterns. Fang Hao took out the key, dropped by the Stone Tomb Commander, and directly inserted it into the keyhole. He turned it forcefully, and with a click, the lock opened. It was indeed the key to this door. Push it open. The skeletons behind him stepped forward and began to work together to push open the huge bronze door, accompanied by a piercing sound. The bronze door opened little by little. The bronze door opened, revealing the scene behind it. This place was even more spacious, and one could see the huge bronze door connecting to the next room at a glance. That on both sides were densely packed stone beds with ghouls. However, at the far end, there was not a single large stone bed, but 4 huge bronze coffins leaning against the wall, standing upright. The bronze coffins were old and mottled, and the runes carved on them were unclear due to rust. But Fang Hao could confirm that the enemies were definitely inside. Once they got close, they would awaken from the coffins and fight them. Everyone stood outside the door, and Fang Hao began to think, should he go back and get 2 barrels of gunpowder and give them a good blast here? No, if the cave was blown up, all his efforts would be in vain. If the entire space collapsed, even those iron claw rats would be exhausted trying to clear out such a large space. He still had to fight head-on. All archers enter stable aiming state. Fang Hao ordered directly. Stable aiming is a skill of archers. Entering the stable aiming state increases attack by 20% and accuracy by 30%. After all the archers entered the state, Fang Hao nudged the skeleton warrior next to him. Go take a walk inside. As the skeleton warriors entered the next area, the ghouls on the stone beds sat up one after another. They jumped down from the stone beds like dumplings falling into a pot, making a clattering sound, and began searching for the culprits who disturbed their rest. Fire! Fang Hao immediately ordered the archers to fire, and arrows rained down into the room ahead, striking the targets that had just landed. Although this attack was effective, the ghouls were numerous and began launching a frantic assault towards their position. Skeleton spearmen, advance and raise your shields, Fang Hao ordered loudly. The skeleton spearmen from the rear moved forward, holding their kite shields in front of them, forming an iron wall. Long spears extended through the gaps in the shields, pointing towards the charging enemies. While the second rank, the skeleton warriors, gripped their knights' swords tightly, awaiting the upcoming battle. Fang Hao had specifically not brought any skeleton mages this time. Aside from the skeleton mages being slow, he also hadn't expected to encounter such a large number of enemies. Bang, bang, bang. The ghouls, fearless of death, slammed into the shields, and spears pierced through their bodies as if through dried jerky. Leaving not a single drop of blood, the ghouls roared in fury, swinging the weapons in their hands. Striking repeatedly against the shield wall, the ghouls behind trampled over the bodies of their fallen comrades, breaking through the shield wall barrier, and engaged in a fierce battle with the skeleton warriors in the rear. Neither side felt pain nor feared death. Undead. They were terrifyingly tenacious. The battle between the undead lasted for nearly an hour, when the Blood Hunter's greatsword cleaved the last ghoul. The battle finally came to an end. The skeleton forces also suffered heavy losses. Fang Hao glanced towards the end, at the 4 unopened bronze coffins, and said, Blood Hunter, take your men back to a safe area first. I'll go back and bring in Jia and the others. The Blood Hunter's combat characteristic was extremely high mobility in this narrow tomb. The combat power they could exert was greatly reduced, although dealing with the Stone Tomb Commander just now wasn't strenuous. It still took a considerable amount of time to kill it. There were still 4 bronze coffins ahead. If 1 or 2 hero-level enemies emerged, they would be difficult to deal with. He wasn't afraid in his divine descent state. But the Blood Hunter had already transformed from a vampire into a skeleton that if he died again, he would truly be gone. It would be safer to bring in Jia and Horan here as well. Understood, my lord. The Blood Hunter showed no dissatisfaction and began directing the remaining troops to retreat to the previous area at AS for Fang Hao. He directly deactivated his divine descent state and woke up in his bedroom bed. He took a sip of the fruit wine placed by his bedside, then pushed the door open and left the room to in the first floor hall. Ear was conducting a cooking training session with several maids. The maids were listening intently, their large eyes wide with focus. Master. The maids quickly greeted him. Fang Hao nodded and asked, Where is Jia? She's in the backyard. Should I call her? Ear said, No need. You all continue. I'll go find her myself. Understood, master. Fang Hao exited through the back door of the Lord's mansion, which led to a courtyard. The courtyard wasn't part of the mansion structure, but was instead a beautiful small garden surrounding the spring of rejuvenation, filled with blooming flowers and tended by the maids, resulting in a fragrant and pleasant space. Although birds didn't dare approach here, there were still many butterflies fluttering in the courtyard. Stepping into the courtyard, he saw Jia on the nearby lawn, wearing a light chest wrap and practicing boxing against a sandbag. Sweat beaded and ran down her neck, her athletic figure possessing a unique beauty. Seeing Fang Hao come out, Jia stopped punching the sandbag. Are you done over there? She asked. No, I ran into a bit of trouble. I need you to come with me, Fang Hao said. All right, let's go, Jia said readily, wiping the sweat from her body. Okay, Jia went back to her room to quickly pack a few things, then waited outside the door. Fang Hao returned to his room and entered the divine descent state again. The two of them mounted a bone dragon and flew towards the city where Horan was located. After circling around for a while, they returned to the location of the mountain ridge, ancient tomb. The three of them followed the excavated tomb passage and met up with the blood hunter, new skeleton. Soldiers had already been added to the tomb passage, replacing the fallen units. It's those 4 bronze coffins ahead that we don't know what kind of enemies are inside yet. So be careful when the time comes, Fang Hao explained to Jia and Huaren. With 3 heroes now, Fang Hao felt much more confident. Even if there were 4 hero-level enemies inside, he still had a large number of undead troops and could overwhelm them. Understood, my lord. Huaren replied that Jia, however, stood with her hands on her hips and didn't say much. Next, after Fang Hao arranged the combat formation, he had a skeleton approach the bronze coffins. As the skeleton approached, a thump-thump, knocking sound came from the bronze coffins, as if someone inside was banging on the sealed lids. Prepare for battle, Fang Hao ordered. All the skeleton archers entered a steady firing stance, aiming the arrows in their hands towards the constantly shaking bronze coffins. Fang Hao had positioned the skeleton archers strategically, placing a large number on the flat ground in the middle and on the stone beds that reached the ceiling on both sides. The purpose was to give the corpses inside the bronze coffins a special, welcoming gift at the very first moment. The bronze coffins trembled more and more violently. Bang! With 4 loud bangs, the 4 coffins were opened, revealing the ferocious monsters inside. Twilight Reveler, Tier 10. They still maintained their human form, their crimson eyes glowing with a bloodthirsty red light, and their twisted lips revealing sharp fangs. They wore exquisitely embroidered formal attire, which had become mottled and tattered over the endless years. These were 4 true blood race units, not the undead encountered outside. Fang Hao also breathed a sigh of relief. They were just 4 Tier 10 units, not hero units. The Twilight Revelers let out unpleasant howls with their dry throats. Fang Hao watched the 4 vampires adapting to their bodies and immediately issued an order. Fire! Whoosh! A dense volley of arrows, whistling through the air, shot towards the 4 figures. Bang, bang! The 4 figures who had just stepped out of the bronze coffins were instantly knocked back inside, their bodies riddled with arrows. Reload! Free fire! Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! Dense volleys of arrows poured down relentlessly, continuously striking the bodies of the 4 figures, until the arrow shafts filled the bronze coffins, burying the 4 bodies beneath the shafts and making it difficult to hit their bodies further. They're not dead yet, are they? And Jia asked from the side. Clatter. As soon as she finished speaking, the 4 figures shakily stood up from the pile of arrow shafts. Fire! Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! Just as they got up, they were knocked back down again, falling back into the pile of arrow shafts. Fang Hao signaled to stop firing again, watching the targets from a distance. Clatter! Fire! Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! Only when the arrow supply was running low did Fang Hao look at the 3 heroes beside him. Go easy on them. I need the bodies intact, Fang Hao instructed. All right. The 3 moved their feet and instantly charged towards the 4 figures who were struggling to get up. With the addition of the 3 heroes, the pace of the battle quickened. Bloodhunt Batwing spread her wings and charged forward, her long sword piercing the enemy's body directly before they could even climb out of the pile of arrow shafts. Fireblade and Njia followed closely behind. Fireblade's long blade and Njia's tiger claws killing the enemies who were riddled with arrows. The entire battle was not as difficult as Fang Hao had imagined. Dai was even much easier than facing a group of ghouls. Not a single casualty occurred. 4 bodies were pulled out from the pile of arrow shafts. This time, they didn't turn to ash like the ghouls, but their bodies remained intact. Clean up the battlefield and collect all the arrows, Fang Hao ordered loudly. The skeletons began to move, collecting the arrows. The arrows stuck in the 4 blood race members were also pulled out, leaving dense wounds from which dark red, viscous blood flowed. They quickly cleaned up the battlefield. Soon, the spoils of war from the battlefield were collected, weapons used by the ghouls, human gold coins, and keys. 102 death marks, 3 bloodstones, 85 shadowstones. It was a good harvest. With this batch of shadowstones, he could upgrade the buildings in the undead faction when he returned. Immediately after, a golden treasure chest was also discovered and brought before Fang Hao. He opened the treasure chest. Obtained Fortress Blueprint. Bronze zombie coffin crafting blueprint. Noble cane sword crafting blueprint. Bloodstone 12. Battle coin 117. The harvest from the golden treasure chest was quite substantial. Building blueprints and crafting blueprints were also obtained. Among them was a blueprint for a bronze coffin, indicating he was one step closer to the funeral business. He checked the blueprint attributes. Fortress. Category: Building blueprint. Description: A fixed military facility. Can be built in strategic mountain passes, vital points of border cities. Used for stationing troops and setting up checkpoints. Construction required: wood 3,000, stone 2,000, stone brick 1,500, iron 500. Metal parts 120. The function of a fortress needs no further introduction. Currently, the city where Fireblade is stationed serves the function of a fortress. It stations a large number of troops to guard against the Skullcrusher tribe from the northeast, and also protects Copper Bull's Manhwa market. If someone attacks, that will be the first battlefield. If Manhwa is attacked, they can also quickly provide support instead of rushing from the main city. Therefore, the role of a fortress is still very important, even if no one attacks. The fortress can serve as a checkpoint leading to the main city, inspecting teams coming and going from the main city to increase the safety within the territory. It can be said to be a very practical building blueprint. Bronze zombie coffin, purple copper 10, copper plate 5, hardwood 10, thick leather 6, cotton 20, high quality fabric 10, death mark 2. Description: A special zombie coffin made by the Evernight race, which can better preserve the body in special environments and has the effect of nourishing spiritual power. This wasn't the first time Fang Hao had obtained a zombie coffin. This time, it was a bronze coffin, which consumed a lot of materials. It could be used in special environments. Thinking about it, in the sunless depths of this mountain, a wooden coffin would have long rotted away. Noble cane sword, blue hardwood 2, iron 3, cast iron block 3. Description: Be careful of the wooden canes in the hands of those hypocrites. Otherwise, you'll end up with an extra hole in your body. Not bad. A blue weapon. And it doesn't consume much material. After putting away the spoils of war, Fang Hao and the others continued to the next copper door. He turned the key and opened the door directly. As the door opened, the glowstones in everyone's hands gradually dimmed. This was a much larger space. There were no stone beds like in the previous area, nor were there any enemies or coffins. Directly above the space was a circular copper mirror tilted downwards. Carvings resembling sun rays surrounded the mirror, and on the carvings were 4 sun essences. The copper mirror shone a beam of sunlight directly onto the stone platform, standing in the center of the space. On the stone platform, a shriveled, grayish-white heart was placed. The walls around the space were covered with painted patterns, and there was no copper door leading to the next space. This should be the last space in this ancient tomb. Damn, what kind of weird stuff is this again? Fang Hao cursed. The scene at this moment was more bizarre than having 2 enemies standing in front of them. Sunlight shining on a heart? How many years had it been? The copper door was covered in rust. Even dried jerky should have turned to dust by now. What is it? What is that? And Jia craned her neck, trying hard to look forward. Looks like a heart, Fang Hao guessed. Who's so cruel to dig out someone's heart and leave it hanging there? Fang Hao didn't answer in Jia, but instead pointed to another skeleton and said, "Walk around the room once." The skeleton warrior beside him received the order, holding his sword and shield, and swaggered around the entire space once. Then he stood back beside Fang Hao. There was no movement in the room at all. Neither enemies nor mechanisms appeared. Walk 2 more laps. The skeleton went in again and walked around the room twice. During this time, Fang Hao also had him knock on the wall and move some of the burial objects nearby. Everything was silent, and no changes appeared. Could it be that there were no tomb guardians set up here? After verifying it several times and still finding no changes, Fang Hao gave further orders. Don't touch that heart. Move out the rest of the burial objects. All the skeleton soldiers outside the door entered the room and began to move out the burial objects one by one. Time had eroded the fabric and paintings, but some gold and silver items were still preserved. Fang Hao came to the side and examined the patterns on the wall. Bloodstones and the appearance of blood race troops indicated a definite connection to vampires here. However, The relief patterns carved on the wall looked more like human life and rituals, farming, weaving, and some aspects of daily life. It wasn't that the blood race didn't do these things, but in the overall patterns, there was a dazzling sun depicted at the top. If this was a blood race place, why would they deliberately depict daytime and the sun? This left Fang Hao a bit confused. Crack. Just as Fang Hao was carefully analyzing the content of the reliefs, a crisp sound suddenly came from the top. Fang Hao thought it was going to collapse and quickly looked towards the source of the sound. He saw that in the center, a skeleton was riding on the shoulders of another skeleton, and in its hand was a large circular bronze mirror. This moment, it was trying hard to dig out the sun essence next to the bronze mirror. Fang Hao's heart tightened instantly. He immediately looked nervously at the heart on the stone platform in the center below. Thump. Suddenly, that shriveled heart slightly beat once. Fang Hao's heart also beat violently along with it. Quick, get out. And Jia, retreat outside first. Fang Hao called out loudly. Jia was a living being, and in certain situations, she was more susceptible to harm than the undead. Everyone rushed outwards. Outside the door, the bodies of the 4 twilight revelers who had already died began to tremble violently. Blood as thick as syrup flowed from their wounds, surging towards the heart in the secret chamber. With the addition of the 3 heroes, the pace of the battle quickened. Bloodhunt Batwing spread his wings and charged forward, his longsword piercing directly through the enemy's body before they could even crawl out of the pile of arrows. Fireblade and Anya followed closely behind. Fireblade's long fiery blade and Anya's tiger fist struck down the enemies who were impaled with arrows. The entire battle was not as difficult as Fang Hao had imagined. It was even much easier than facing a group of ghouls. There were no casualties. 4 corpses were pulled out of the pile of arrows. This time, they didn't turn to dust like the ghouls, but their bodies were all preserved. Clean up the battlefield and collect all the arrows, Fang Hao ordered loudly. The skeletons began to move. The arrows were collected, and the arrows stuck in the 4 blood race members were also pulled out, leaving dense wounds from which dark red, viscous blood flowed. The battlefield was quickly cleaned up. Soon, the spoils of war on the battlefield were collected. Weapons used by the ghouls, human gold coins, and keys. 102 marks of death, 3 bloodstones, and 85 shadow stones. It was a decent haul. With this batch of shadow stones, he could go back and upgrade the buildings of the undead faction. Next, a golden treasure chest was also discovered and brought before Fang Hao. Open the treasure chest. Obtained fortress construction blueprint, bronze corpse raising coffin production blueprint, noble cane sword production blueprint, bloodstone X12, warfire coin X117. The harvest from the golden treasure chest was quite a lot. Building blueprints and production blueprints were also obtained. Among them was a blueprint for a bronze coffin. So it seemed he was one step closer to the funeral business. Check the blueprint attributes. Fortress category, building blueprint, description. A fixed military facility. Can be built at strategic passes, key points of border towns. Used for stationing troops and setting up checkpoints. Construction required. Wood X3000, stone X2000. Stone bricks X1500, iron X500. Metal parts X120. The function of a fortress needs no further introduction. Currently, the city where Fireblade is stationed serves the function of a fortress. A large number of troops are stationed there, guarding against the Skullcrusher tribe to the northeast, and also protecting the Minotaur's Manhwa market if someone attacks. That will be the first battlefield. If Manhwa is attacked, they can also quickly provide support instead of having to rush from the main city. Therefore, the role of a fortress is still very important, even if no one attacks. A fortress can serve as a checkpoint leading to the main city, inspecting teams going to and from the main city, and increasing the safety within the territory. It can be said to be a very practical building blueprint. Bronze corpse raising coffin, purple bronze X10, copper plate X5, tough wood X10, thick tough leather X6, cotton X20, high quality fabric X10, mark of death X2. Description: a special corpse raising coffin of the Evernight race, which can better preserve the body in special environments and has the effect of nourishing mental power. This was not the first time Fang Hao had obtained a corpse raising coffin. This time, it was a bronze coffin. And the material consumption was also high. It can be used in special environments. Thinking about it, in this sunless mountain stomach, a wooden coffin would have long since rotted away. Noble cane sword. Blue tough wood X2, iron X3. Cast iron block X3. Description: be careful of the wooden canes in the hands of those hypocrites. Otherwise, you'll end up with an extra hole in your body. Not bad. A blue weapon. And the material consumption is not high. After storing the spoils of war, Fang Hao and the others continued to the next bronze door. The key turned and opened the door directly. As the door opened, the luminous stones in everyone's hands began to gradually dim. This was a more spacious area. There were no stone beds like in the previous area, nor were there any enemies or coffins. Directly above the space was a circular bronze mirror slanted downwards. Around the bronze mirror were carved patterns resembling the sun's rays, and on the patterns were 4 sun essences. A beam of sunlight shone from the bronze mirror, directly aimed at the stone platform standing in the center of the space. On the stone platform, a shriveled, gray-white heart was placed. The walls around the space were covered with drawings, and there was no bronze door leading to the next space. This should be the last space in this ancient tomb. Damn, what kind of weird stuff is this again? Fang Hao cursed. The scene at the moment was even more bizarre than having 2 enemies standing in front of him. The sun shining on a heart? How many years had it been? The bronze door was covered in rust. Even if it were air-dried jerky, it should have turned to dust by now. What is it? What is that? Anya craned her neck, trying to look forward. Looks like a heart, Fang Hao guessed. Who is so cruel to dig out someone's heart and leave it hanging there? Fang Hao didn't answer Anya, but instead pointed to a skeleton again and said, "Walk around the room once." The skeleton warrior beside him received the order, held his sword and shield, and swaggered around the entire space once. Then he returned to Fang Hao's side. There was no movement in the room at all. Neither enemies nor mechanisms appeared. Walk 2 more circles. The skeleton went in again and walked 2 circles around the room. During this time, Fang Hao also had him knock on the wall and move some of the burial objects nearby. Everything was silent, and no change occurred. Could it be that no tomb guardians were set up here? After verifying several times and still finding no changes, Fang Hao continued to give orders. Don't touch that heart. Move all the other burial objects out. All the skeleton soldiers outside the door entered the room and began to move the burial objects out one by one. Time had eroded the cloth and paintings, but some gold and silver items were still preserved. Fang Hao came to the side and looked at the patterns. On the wall, the appearance of bloodstones and blood race units confirmed that there was a definite connection here with vampires. However, the relief patterns drawn on the walls looked more like human life and rituals, farming, weaving, and some daily life scenes. It's not that the blood race doesn't do these things, but in the overall patterns, there is a bright sun depicted at the top. If this was a blood race place, why would they deliberately depict daytime and the sun? This left Fang Hao a bit confused. Crack. Just as Fang Hao was carefully deducing the content of the reliefs, a crisp sound suddenly came from the top. Fang Hao thought the roof was about to collapse and quickly looked towards the source of the sound. He saw that in the center, a skeleton was riding on the shoulders of another skeleton, and in its hand was a huge circular bronze mirror. This moment, it was trying to dig out the sun essence next to the bronze mirror. Fang Hao's heart instantly tightened. He immediately looked nervously at the heart on the stone platform in the center below. Thump. Suddenly, that shriveled heart twitched slightly. Fang Hao's heart also pounded violently. Quick, retreat. Anya, retreat outside first. Fang Hao shouted loudly. Anya was a living being, and in some circumstances, she was more susceptible to harm than the undead. Everyone rushed outwards, outside the door. The bodies of the 4 twilight revelers who had already died began to tremble violently. Viscous blood like syrup flowed from their wounds, surging towards the heart in the secret chamber. The blood, as if pulled by some force, turned into a river of blood, rushing towards the heart in the center. By the time Fang Hao noticed the anomaly, the 4 corpses had already shriveled up and crumbled into fine sand. When all the blood was swallowed by the heart, the originally shriveled and gray heart began to become increasingly red, full, and plump. Thump, thump, thump. The heart began to beat violently, like a young heart, full of power. It's a bit scary. And Jia peeked her head over again. It's fine. Fang Hao wanted to comfort Jia, but found that his own voice was trembling a little. Everyone stood at the doorway and watched for a long time. The heart just kept beating, but there were no other changes. I'll go take a look. If there's anything unusual, I'll seal the door. Fang Hao said. No treasure chests were found in the entire room. But a powerful internal organ might bring him other gains that I asked for why he had to go in himself. The reason was also very simple, that he was in the divine arrival state. So even if he died, nothing would happen. Also, and most importantly, he could see the item's information. Whether there was anything strange about the heart could only be seen by getting closer. Several heroes nodded. And Fang Hao strode closer to the heart on the stone platform. As he approached, Fang Hao also checked the heart's information. Reviving heart category. Organ effect. Consuming heart blood can transform one into a vampire. Description: that night, the cunning city lord held a grand ball. He invited all the powerful nobles and wealthy merchants in the city to taste his treasured wine. The crimson wine had a faint fishy smell. Under the moonlight, they grew sharp fangs. Quest: beating heart, accepted. Description: find a complete body. There is a chance to gain the allegiance of an epic tier hero. Holy cow, epic tier. Fang Hao almost cried out in surprise. Wait, is epic tier higher than orange? Aren't these two the same color? It seems that epic tier is a bit higher. I'll ask Nielsen when I get back if I have a chance. After the excitement, Fang Hao began to analyze the quest information. According to the quest description, he needed to help this heart find the rest of the body. In other words, this epic tier expert was dismembered and buried in different places. Thinking about it that way, it seems that epic tier isn't too strong after all. Since they were dismembered, this quest was the second one Fang Hao had received that was outside the system. The first was Xiao Yu's unfinished business, which required collecting 12 swords of atonement. Only 2 have been collected so far. And now there's another quest to collect body parts. Each one is stranger than the last. Of course, these quests have no time limit. And it seems there are no penalties either if it doesn't work. Fang Hao will just have Nielsen seal it in an organ jar when he gets back and see if it triggers any special attributes. Alright, there's no danger. Fang Hao called out. Keep moving things out. Take the heart back too. All the skeletons came in again and began to continue moving the burial objects out. The heart was directly thrown into a pottery jar for easy carrying. By the time Fang Hao climbed out of the cave entrance, the sky was already getting darker. The sun had slowly sunk below the horizon. Exploring the ancient tomb actually took a whole day. With all the items prepared, Fang Hao ordered the return journey to begin. Outside per city. Clip-clop. Clip-clop. Urgent hoofbeats sounded. At the last moment before the city gate closed, a mercenary entered the city, amidst the guards' curses and warnings. He directly abandoned his horse and went straight to a room on the second floor of the tavern. After taking 2 heavy breaths, he gently knocked on the door. Who is it? A low voice came from inside the room. It's me, Lyle. Come in. The door opened, and inside the room sat 5 well-equipped, burly men. These people were not locals, but mercenaries who had recently arrived here, and the bounty for finding the ancient tomb in the tavern was posted by these people. Any news? A big bearded man asked in a deep voice. They had been here for 3 days and hadn't received any news, whether they searched themselves or others. They hadn't found any news of the ancient tomb. Yes. Lyle picked up the pottery cup on the table and took a sip. Everyone's expressions instantly became serious. They all stared at Lyle and asked, Who found it? Is the location reliable? Did you kill the person? Lyle was arranged outside to investigate whether anyone had discovered the entrance to the ancient tomb. Once discovered and the news confirmed, they would kill the person to prevent the news from leaking out. Of course, even if Lyle made a mistake and the person who discovered it came to them for the reward, they would use the same method. Leave no survivors. It's really damn strange. Guess what? It's a large group of undead, at least tens of thousands. Lyle took another sip of water. They were transporting burial objects and left, heading north. How can there be undead here, Lyle? You're not lying to us, trying to keep it for yourself, are you? Another man said in a deep voice, I'm lying to your mother's leg. If I were lying to you, would I come back? Wouldn't it be better to just run off with the things inside? Lao retorted loudly. Actually, this person just said it, and didn't really believe Lao would lie in his heart. But with so many human towns densely populated here, it was really hard to accept that there was such a large undead force. You said they transported the burial objects away? An old voice sounded from the inner room. An old man in luxurious clothes, holding a cane, walked out. The mercenary next to him immediately gave up his seat for the old man to sit down and talk. Yes, Mr. IV. I saw the undead pushing flatbed carts with many burial objects on them. Lao replied respectfully. The old man pulled a key from his neck and said with a puzzled expression, "The key to the tomb is in my hand." How did they get in? Everyone looked at Lyle, waiting for him to give a reasonable answer. I don't know about that. The undead army was too numerous. To avoid being discovered, I only followed them for a short distance from afar. Lyle replied. The old man nodded. Lyle had no reason to deceive him. Even if he wanted to lie, he wouldn't fabricate such an unbelievable reason as an undead army. Then did you see anything special among the burial objects? Old IV asked again. Special things? What do you mean? For example, a body. All the mercenaries frowned. Did IV hire them to look for a body in the ancient tomb? This was somewhat difficult to understand. Mr. IV, I didn't see a body. After all, the distance was too far and they were all undead. Even if there was one, it would be hard for me to notice. Lal continued to answer. Old IV nodded, thought for a moment, and continued. Tomorrow we will go to the mountain to see. If what I am looking for is still not inside, we will have to be prepared to deal with the undead. The mercenaries' expressions were solemn. They were people who licked blood from the tip of a knife. But they were definitely not fools who went to their deaths. They didn't have such a hobby as dealing with tens of thousands of undead creatures. The big-bearded mercenary took a deep breath and said, Mr. IV, at this point, you should tell me the secret of this ancient tomb. You promised us eternal life and wealth. Looking directly into Old Four's eyes, if you don't tell us what you know today, I will withdraw from this operation. You just need to pay me for the distance traveled. The other mercenaries also spoke up, saying that if Old IV couldn't convince them, they would part ways. Old IV was old. With his body, it would be difficult to accomplish the tasks ahead. He relied more on these mercenaries. Therefore, he had to keep these people and make them willing to obey his command. All right, I can tell you, but you need to know that obtaining eternal life requires a complex ritual, and only I know the method to obtain eternal life. Old IV looked around at everyone and reminded them in a low voice. The mercenaries nodded, indicating that they understood. Old IV took out an old notebook bound with thin hemp rope from his pregnant and said, A knightless king. As long as you drink her blood according to the method, you can live forever.